She had a hot night with her stepfather. I was just broken. These words sounded like a broken record in my head. I couldn't believe it, couldn't accept that it had really happened. It was absurd, immoral, impossible. But the facts were ruthless. My wife, Jennifer, cheated on me with her stepfather, Harry. People I thought I knew. People I trusted. Jennifer and I have been together for 12 years, 10 of them married. We have 2 wonderful children, 7-year-old Sarah and 4-year-old Jason. I have always considered our life normal, maybe not perfect, but stable and real. But over the past few months, everything has changed. It all started with small things. She started coming home from work later, often making excuses for the piles of work that never seemed to end. Then came the weekends with the girls. In the past, she had always wanted to spend time at home, but now she was constantly drawn to relax somewhere. And then, indifference. She looked right through me, as if I had become invisible to her. Her smile, previously sincere and warm, turned into a cold mask. I tried to ignore it, because, to be honest, I was afraid to find out the truth. But one day, when I saw her face pale when she received a call from G, it hit me like a bolt from the blue. Harry, her stepfather. I used to joke that he was always hanging around our house for no reason. Now it didn't seem funny anymore. My suspicions grew like poison ivy, entwining my every thought and movement. I tried to find an excuse. It's just a coincidence. Harry is her stepfather. He often helps the family. It's okay. But every time I saw him near our house in her presence, I started to feel sick. The worst part was seeing Jennifer so alive. She suddenly became brighter. She used to wear simple clothes, cozy like our lives. And now? Heels, red lipstick, perfume that I didn't buy. Have you met someone? I asked her once, trying to turn it into a joke. She looked at me as if I were the last idiot. Come on, Mike. It's just that this new job is wearing me down. I want to look normal. It's fine. The word hung in the air like poisonous smoke. I no longer felt part of her world. That day everything changed. I took the day off because I couldn't bring myself to work. Her phone, left on the kitchen table, flashed a message. I walked by, but my eyes fell involuntarily on the screen. Can't wait for our. I'm looking forward to the next meeting. Yesterday was incredible. My fingers clenched into a fist, and the blood rushed to my head. I recognized the number. Harry. Anger washed over me in a wave. I could have smashed the phone against the wall, but instead, a plan was born in my mind. A plan that required patience. I wasn't going to just scream or cry. I wasn't going to give her the opportunity to lie to my face. I was going to document every single deception she made. That evening I was calmer than ever. Jennifer had to go somewhere again, and I just nodded my head and smiled. Here are the keys. I filled up the car, I said, handing her the key fob. Oh, thank you, darling. You're the best. Her voice was sweet but hollow. I followed her. I already had a tracking program on my phone, hidden in a gift I supposedly bought her a few months ago. She thought I was just a stupid, average man. So be it. When she drove off, I waited until the marker on the map froze near the country house Harry had inherited from his first wife. I didn't follow her right away. I was going to catch them red-handed, but not in the way she could. Imagine. I was patient. Very patient. I was sitting in my car on the side of the road, parking lights off and the engine turned off. My hand was clutching my phone, on which a small marker flickered, Jennifer's location. Harry's house stood at the end of a deserted road, surrounded by darkness and silence. It had once seemed like an ordinary old cottage, but now in my eyes it was a symbol of betrayal. I looked at him, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my fingers turned white. The light was on in only one room on the second floor, and I could almost feel what was happening there. I was torn from the inside. I wanted to storm out, scream, break everything in sight, but another part of me whispered, "Be patient, Mike. Let her believe she's still safe. Let them both trap themselves." I pulled out an old camera that had been in the trunk for a long time. Years ago, I had been fascinated by photography when life was simple and happiness seemed to be a commonplace. Now this camera seemed to be my only tool of truth. I took a few shots of the house, the lighted window, their silhouettes, which sometimes flashed against the curtains. This is not the end, I promised myself. I returned home late at night, but slept only a few hours. When I woke up, I felt as if I had been run over by a train, but a plan had already begun to form inside me. I knew that anger shouldn't be released immediately. It had to become a tool, cold and calculated. Jennifer was sitting in the kitchen drinking coffee when I came downstairs. She looked as she always did, as if nothing had happened. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she had a calm expression on her face that I could no longer decipher. "You went to bed late last night?" she said casually, not even looking at me. "A lot of work," I answered, hiding my eyes in the newspaper. She just nodded. Not long ago, she would have asked questions, worried, been interested in me. But now, just emptiness. Her attention was somewhere else, and I knew where. That day I decided to start collecting evidence systematically. I installed additional cameras at home. She didn't suspect anything, of course, because I did it when she was at work. I also recorded all her calls to our home phone. One evening I heard her talking to him in a whisper. "Harry, no, not tonight." "Yeah, I want to go too. It's just that Michael will get suspicious." It hit me harder than I expected. She says this right in our house. In the house where our children live. Harry. I could almost feel his smug smile. My thoughts grew darker with each passing day. I imagined him sitting in his old chair, convinced that I was being deceived right under his nose. The next step was to talk to the person I trusted the most, my brother Tom. "You're kidding, right?" he said when I told him everything. "Her stepfather, Mike? That's too much." "I wish it was a joke," I replied, looking into my empty coffee cup. "What are you going to do?" "To put everything together. And when I'm ready, when they believe they've won, I'll break their lives into small pieces." Tom was silent. He had never seen me like this. I had never seen myself like this. "Just tell me if you need help," he finally said, squeezing my shoulder. It was the first moment in a long time when I felt that I was not alone. In the evening, when the children were already asleep, Jennifer came to me. "You've become a little distant, Mike. Is everything okay?" She sounded concerned, but her eyes showed nothing but fear that I knew something. "Everything is fine," I answered, getting up and walking to the garage. Something like doubt flashed in her eyes for a moment, and it was a small victory for me. She begins to be afraid, and this is just the beginning. My plan began to take shape like an ice sculpture, cold, clear, and ruthless. The anger I felt was not chaotic. No, I tamed it, made it my ally. Harry and Jennifer thought they were smart. They thought they could deceive me as a schoolboy, that they were in control of the situation. But what they didn't know was that I was playing a long game. I started acting as if everything was as it was before. I became even more attentive to Jennifer. I cooked dinner, brought coffee to her bed in the morning. "You are incredible," she said once when I handed her a cup, decorating it with a fake smile. "I just love you," I answered, looking her straight in the eye. Inside, I could feel my words burning in my throat. She didn't deserve this, but this was my weapon. At the same time, I established contact with Harry. I called him and offered to help with some minor repairs in his house. Harry must have thought I was a complete fool, because he agreed right away. "You know, Mike, you've always been a good guy," he said, patting me on the shoulder. "I just want to help," I replied, hiding my contempt behind my friendly tone. I set up a camera in his living room, where they spent time together. I had to record everything, and I knew the moment would come. I started playing on their weaknesses. I knew that Jennifer held on to her reputation like a shrine. For her, the ideal image of a wife and mother was even more important than our marriage. I dropped a few subtle hints. One night at dinner, "Have you talked to Harry lately?" I asked, not looking up from my plate. She flinched a little, but quickly pulled herself together. "No. What's the point? He just said he saw you recently. Maybe I'm confused." Her eyes darkened for a moment, but she didn't answer. Doubt is a poison, and I had already poured it into her head. I needed a scandal. A big, public scandal to tear their lives apart. And I knew how to do it. I invited friends and family to a small dinner at our house. Jennifer was surprised, but didn't say anything. I was the perfect host that evening. Jokes, smiles, wine flowed like a river. And that's when I made my first move. I accidentally, as if by mistake, turned on the video I had recorded at Harry's house on the TV. Jennifer and her stepfather were on the screen, hugging, having conversations that left no room for doubt. At first there was silence. Then there was shock. Jennifer turned pale. Her glass fell to the floor and broke into pieces. "Michael, what is it?" Her voice was shaking, but I noticed something else in it. Fear. The guests looked at her and then at me, not realizing what was happening. Harry didn't even have time to react. He just sat there like a cornered animal. "Is it true, Jen?" her friend Laura asked, unable to look away from the screen. Jennifer did not answer. She didn't even try to make excuses. She knew she had lost. "I'm sorry," I finally spoke, looking at everyone. "I don't think there's any more room for lies in my house." The next day I filed for divorce. I did not hide the reason. All my friends, colleagues, neighbors, everyone found out that Jennifer had cheated on me with her own stepfather. Her reputation was ruined. And Harry? His family turned their backs on him. Jennifer tried to talk to me. "Mike, please. I made a mistake." "A mistake?" I looked at her coldly. "Mistakes are when you forget to turn off the light. This was a conscious choice." She was crying. Before, it would have broken me, but now I felt nothing but satisfaction. I had not just defeated them. I had erased their lives, as they had erased mine. After that ill-fated dinner, my life was divided into two parts, before and after. I used to think that the worst thing about betrayal was the betrayal itself, but no. The worst thing is the silence that comes afterwards. The emptiness. Your home, your world, turns into a ruin, and you wander among the rubble, trying to find at least something whole. Jennifer disappeared for a few days. She took the children to her mother's house, probably afraid that I would explode a second time. But she didn't realize that I had already thrown out all my anger. Now there was only cold calculation and a desire to start over. Harry? His life has changed completely too. I heard his ex-wife, Jennifer's mother, kick him out of the house. I imagined his face as he stood on the doorstep, weighed down by his pitiful belongings and his own meanness. Everything he had now turned to dust. And I did it. I made them feel what I felt. In the first days after the exposure, I felt like I was wandering in a fog. My children were the only thing that kept me afloat. Sarah and Jason didn't understand what was happening, but their eyes full of worry kept me going. "Dad, why did Mom leave?" Sarah asked one day, her voice trembling. I bit my tongue to keep from saying too much. "Mommy is just tired, baby. Everything will be fine." There was some truth in my lie. Everything would really be fine. Someday. But not for her. Not for Jennifer. I began to act quietly but firmly. 1. Work. I found out that Jennifer was up for a promotion at her company. I met her boss, Mr. Fields, for lunch. All I needed was a few hints and an accidental showing of photos that confirmed her affair. "I just thought it might affect your company's reputation," I said, feigning sympathy. Fields sighed and nodded. A week later, Jennifer lost her chance for a promotion. 2. Children. I filed for sole custody. I didn't want my children to grow up with a woman who was capable of such things. Nick helped me prepare my arguments. Photos. Correspondence. Her shameless life. The judge looked at her in disgust. I won. 3. Social life. I started rumors among my friends and acquaintances. I didn't tell lies, I just left hints, enough for people to figure it out on their own. They understood. Jennifer was no longer invited to parties. Her former friends avoided her in supermarkets. A few months later, I saw her by chance in a shopping center. She looked exhausted, tired. Her hair was tousled and her clothes were simple and cheap. She had once been a queen in her own eyes, but now? Now she was just a shadow of the woman I had married. She saw me and came over. "Mike." Her voice was as faint as the rustle of leaves. "Why did you do this?" I looked at her, feeling strangely satisfied that I was no longer suffering. "I did it because you destroyed everything I loved. Did you think I wouldn't notice? That I would forgive you?" Her eyes were filled with tears, but now it didn't affect me anymore. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I smiled a cold, indifferent smile. "And I regret ever trusting you with my heart." I turned around and walked away, leaving her standing in the middle of the hall. She no longer had power over me. I destroyed her just as she had destroyed me. But along with revenge came something else, liberation. I no longer lived in the shadow of her lies. I was myself again, a man who went through hell and came out stronger. My children became my new meaning of life. I bought us a house in the suburbs, away from everything that reminded us of the past. We started from scratch, and every time I looked at them, I knew we had one. The plan was not yet complete. I wanted every step of her new life to be full of shame and missed opportunities. Of course, the divorce and scandal were only the beginning. I met with my lawyer, Nick, who had been a friend of mine since high school. "Do you want to go hard on her?" he asked, looking at my demands. "I don't want to leave her anything. No trust. No peace of mind. No reputation." Nick shook his head, but his eyes sparkled with understanding. "Okay, if that's what you want, we'll crush it." Revenge is a sweet potion that temporarily dulls the pain but does not heal the wounds. I got everything I wanted. The truth came out. Jennifer's reputation was destroyed, and Harry is now just a shadow of his former self, isolated from the family that I didn't want to have anything to do with him anymore. I got custody of the children, who became my only world, but somewhere deep inside there was a vacuum. One morning, as I was getting the kids ready for school, Sarah came up to me with her usual serious, adult face. "Dad, is Mom never coming back?" Her words stabbed me like a knife. "No, baby," I answered softly, kneeling down to look her in the eye. "But it's not your fault. Mommy loves you. She just made a mistake." "And you hate her?" she continued, as if she understood more than I wanted her to understand. I stuttered for a second. "No, Sarah. Hate makes people weak. I'm not angry anymore. You and Jason and I are a team, and we're gonna be okay." She hugged me, and for a moment I felt my heart clench. I took revenge to regain control, to prove that I would not be deceived. But did it make me feel better? That same evening I received a letter. Judging by the handwriting, it was from Jennifer. I held the envelope in my hands, feeling the familiar anger, but also something else, tired. I opened it only after I put the kids to bed. Michael, I know you hate me, and you have the right to do so. I can't explain why I did what I did. I guess because I never felt good enough for you, for our family. That's not an excuse. It's just the truth. Harry, he manipulated me, but that doesn't take away from my guilt either. You took everything from me. Children, friends, respect. And now I see that I deserved it. But please do not take away the last thing from me, the right to see our children. I'm not asking for forgiveness, because I know there will be none. Just give me a chance to regain some of my humanity through Sarah and Jason. Jennifer. I put the letter on the table and sat in silence. Her words did not make me feel sorry for her, but they made me think. I won the war, but what price did the children pay for it? Perhaps it's time to end this battle once and for all. The next day, I made an appointment to meet Jennifer at a cafe. I didn't tell the kids because I wasn't sure if I was ready to take that step. When I went inside, she was already sitting at the table, looking tired and exhausted, but there was something new in her eyes' humility. I sat down across from her and silently ordered coffee. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. I nodded without answering. I let her speak. "Michael, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just want to see my kids. They are my only hope of not going crazy. How can I trust you?" I asked coldly. She swallowed and looked away for a second. "You can't. I know I've ruined everything, but children deserve both parents, even if one of them is miserable." I looked at her and saw not the woman who ruined my life, but a person who destroyed herself. "I'll let you see them," I finally said, "but on my terms. No, Harry. No more lies. If you let them down again, it's over." She looked at me with surprise and relief. "Thank you, Michael. I won't let you down." That evening I came home and hugged my children a little tighter than usual. Sarah asked me why I was so sad, but this time I didn't lie. "Sometimes, baby, even adults make mistakes. But the main thing is to try to correct them." She nodded, and I saw her small smile light up the room. At that moment I realized that revenge was only a temporary relief. The real victory was in remaining myself and not letting hatred destroy what could still be saved. 6 months have passed. Life, strangely enough, began to return to normal. The silence that used to be unbearable has become my best friend. Yeah. I learned to enjoy simple things. Breakfast with my children, walks in the park where Jason would run after the ball and Sarah would pick flowers for Daddy's vases. Jennifer came twice a week. I watched her try to become different, better. She no longer looked like the cold woman she used to be. Sometimes, when she took the children for the weekend, I could see the pain in her eyes, not only for the children, but for the life she had lost. One day Sarah brought me a drawing. "This is all of us," she said proudly, holding out a piece of paper. The picture showed me, her, Jason, and even Jennifer holding their hands. I froze for a moment and then smiled. "It's a beautiful drawing, baby. You're a real artist." She smiled and ran to Jason, and I sat down on the couch and looked at that picture for a long time. I used to dream of a perfect family, and now I realize that perfect is not when everything is smooth, but when you keep moving forward, no matter what. A new chapter in my life began with a chance meeting. It was a rainy Tuesday. I was standing in line at a coffee shop when I suddenly heard a familiar voice behind me. "Michael?" I turned around and saw Megan, an old friend from college. We hadn't seen each other for years. She had always been a sunny person, with a bright smile and a twinkle in her eye. Now she looked the same, although I could feel the wisdom that years bring in her face. "Megan, is that really you?" I couldn't help but be surprised. We sat down at a table and talked for several hours. It turned out that Megan had recently returned to our city after a divorce and was raising her son. "Life is like that," she sighed, looking out at the rain outside the window. "We all make mistakes, but the important thing is to move on." For some reason, her words struck a chord with me. I looked at her and felt something change in my chest, something warm and real. We exchanged numbers and we broke up, but I already knew that this was no accident. The following weeks were filled with new colors. I saw Megan more often. We went for walks with the kids, discussed life, and laughed like I hadn't laughed in a long time. One evening, after the kids were asleep, I was sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee. Megan wrote a short message, "Thank you for just being there. You have no idea how much this means." I smiled and raised my head to the sky. The rain had stopped, and the moon was peeking through the clouds. I used to think that it was impossible to find peace or happiness after a betrayal. But now, sitting in silence, I realized the main thing. Forgiveness is not a gift to another person. It is freedom for yourself. I have not forgiven Jennifer completely. Perhaps I never will. But I let go of that burden. I no longer held on to revenge, to anger, to the past. I was moving forward. On Sarah's birthday, we all got together. Me, the kids, Jennifer, even Megan and her son. It was strange, but right in its own way. Jennifer came up to me when the kids were playing in the garden. "Thank you for letting me be a part of their lives," she said quietly. I nodded, looking at Sarah running around with a ball in her hands and Jason laughing so loudly that my heart was filled with warmth. "Because it's not about you or me, Jen. It's about them," I replied. She smiled and then walked away, leaving me standing next to Megan. "They are happy," she said, looking at the children. "And we deserved it," I replied, feeling my world make sense for the first time in years. And I realized that despite all the storms, life always gives you a chance to start over. You just need to let go of the past and allow yourself to be happy again.